Chapter 194. The tiger snake trap smell would always be something that human cultivators overlooked the most. Li Qingshan possessed a sense of smell that was 100 times greater than regular wild beasts, as well as an instinctive sense for danger and killing intent. It was impossible for him to be ambushed so easily. He erased all of his aura and gripped a wind-entwining blade firmly. He prepared all of his talismans and approached the zombie dwelling slowly. His nose constantly sniffed out the lingering scents in the air, doing his best to determine how many people were hiding in the dwelling right now. He had come exactly for the sect, so how could he flee? Of course, if there were too many people, he would retreat, but if there were too few, he would go and kill them. If he worked with little, and he still had quite a good chance against a 9th-layer Qi practitioner. When he finally set foot in the dwelling, it was empty inside. Only the lingering scent gradually drifted away. Why would these great Qi practitioners wait for a junior in the pitch-black underground? However, they only waited for a few days before leaving to search for Wei Yingjia's whereabouts. Li Qingshan was slightly disappointed. As it seemed, he still had to go through some trouble. In the middle of the night, Li Qingshan climbed up the Hawkwolf guard silently and arrived before his original residence. Sure enough, there was an aura inside, but it was much more powerful than what he had expected. However, there was no mistaking the scent. Qian Rongji had actually broken through to the 5th layer. She was even a little faster than him. He got little and to stand guard outside as Li Qingshan climbed up the building alone. He pushed open the window and saw Qian Rongji meditating and practicing qi. She did not seem perverted at all. Instead, she seemed rather solemn. When Qian Rongji heard the sound of the window frame, she immediately grabbed her weapon and talismans, assuming a defensive posture. Afterwards, she was surprised. "It's you?" Li Qingshan said, "It's me." Qian Rongji's body relaxed. She did not ask Li Qingshan why his body had changed so drastically. Her eyes lit up. "You've reached the 3rd layer. You really are a genius." The first time she met Li Qingshan was only a few months ago. At that time, Li Qingshan was only in the 1st layer of the aura refining realm. Li Qingshan said, "Your cultivation surprised me even more." Qian Rongji said, "Even a loser has his own way of living, but it's a pity that I can't beat you." Li Qingshan narrowed his eyes and said, "What if you can defeat me?" Qian Rongji smiled and said, "You will know when the time comes." Li Qingshan didn't want to dwell on this topic, so he asked directly, "How's the door? Lu, who is in charge now?" "Don't ask me. I was implicated because of Wei Yingjia's disappearance, and now I've been expelled from the family. I've knelt on the ground and begged Grandma for a long time, but it's useless. I've been tested for so long in vain, but I didn't even get to learn a set of martial arts. Don't you think it's pitiful?" Qian Rongji's face was full of bitterness and grievance, as if she didn't kill Wei Yingjia with her own hands. "Implicated?" Li Qingshan sneered, "Same old rules. If you can lure Grandma Shimen out alone to a certain place underground, then everything related to the door in my 100 treasures pouch will belong to you." Qian Rongji's eyes widened. "You can kill a 9th-layer Qi practitioner?" She knew that Li Qingshan had other trump cards, and his strength was at least above the 6th layer, but she didn't expect him to have reached this level. She originally thought that with the speed of her cultivation, it would only be a matter of time before she caught up to Li Qingshan, but at this moment, her confidence suddenly disappeared. Not only did the distance between her and Li Qingshan not shrink, it seemed to be increasing. She also understood why he didn't care about her potential threat. That was because he had absolute confidence in himself. With such a huge difference in strength, no tricks or schemes would work. This man was probably different from any man she had ever met. He was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. "So, it's best if you maintain a bit of respect for me. That's good for both of us." Qian Rongji stopped smiling. "I understand." The vice head of the door, Wei Zhongyuan, and the 4 grannies went to the zombie cave to look for you, but they couldn't find you, so they split up to look for you. The building is spread all over the place, and we're well informed. As soon as you appear, you'll be discovered." Li Qingshan said, "You lured them to the zombie cave?" Qian Rongji said, "I said Wei Yingjia went there to look for you, but I didn't say you killed him." In any case, you've already become sworn enemies with the door, so it doesn't matter to you. You wouldn't be stupid enough to hide there, would you? Li Qingshan's heart felt stifled, but he said boldly, "Of course not. Continue." She said it so calmly that he couldn't act up. Qian Rongji smiled faintly. The building lost 2 building heads in a row, so the door didn't send anyone new. If you want to deal with the door, then I suggest Wei Zhongyuan. He's grieving over the loss of his son, so he's mentally unstable and easy to control. Cultivation. 10th layer Qi practitioner. I refuse. Li Qingshan said resolutely. 10th layer Qi practitioners had opened all the meridians and acupoints in their body, and connected the 12 main meridians and 8 extra meridians. They were only 1 step away from the foundation building realm. The difference between them and 9th layer Qi practitioners was almost the same as the difference between 6th layer Qi practitioners and 5th layer Qi practitioners. Although he was confident in his own strength, it wasn't to the extent of arrogance. Qian Rongji revealed a disappointed expression. Her plan to use Wei Zhongyuan to break through had failed, but she also felt a lot more relieved. At the very least, Li Qingshan currently didn't have the strength to fight against a 10th layer Qi practitioner. Then Grandma Shimin, but I need time. I need time to plan, and I need time to explain my cultivation. Also, the higher-ups will send a new Black Eagle commander. So what? I'll apply for the Black Wolf commander. As long as I advance to the commander level, even if the door suspects me, they won't dare to casually deal with me without evidence. Of course, I still have to thank you for helping me make room. She was full of schemes and schemes in front of other people, but before Li Qingshan, she would always be extremely honest. This was not because she had any special fondness for Li Qingshan. Instead, she had to speak according to the person and speak according to the person. She knew that this was the only way she could work with Li Qingshan and maximize her own benefits. Only then did Li Qingshan remember that she was already at the 5th layer. She did indeed have the right to become a Black Wolf commander. They had joined the Hawk Wolf Guard together. Before he knew it, she had already reached this step. She really was a woman who could not be underestimated. After leaving behind a talisman for contact, Qian Rongji smiled. In a month at the very least, or 3 months at the very most, I'll send Grandma Shimin to you. Li Qingshan nodded. He wanted to use this time to ingest the remaining pills and reach the highest realm of strength he could, so that he could increase his chances of victory as much as possible. Once he won, he could use the pills in Grandma Shimin's 100 treasures pouch to maintain his cultivation speed. The deal between the two of them was for a 9th layer Qi practitioner. Then, Li Qingshan said, "Oh right, can you help me identify these pills?" He had obtained several dozen bottles now, containing several high-level pills. However, he had no idea what their effects were or whether they could be ingested. Qian Rongji was from a clan after all. She had learned proper alchemy from Qian Yannian, so she should be able to identify them. As expected, Qian Rongji's eyes lit up as soon as she saw the pills Li Qingshan took out. She listed out the names and effects of all the pills like she was familiar with them. Most of them had similar effects to Pearl Dew pills, so they could be ingested for cultivation. However, there were also 2 bottles of Qi eruption pills that could instantly unleash one's potential, 2 bottles of concealing pills that could conceal one's presence, and 3 bottles of healing pills that could heal wounds. If he did not recognize their effects, it would be a waste to ingest them. In the end, Li Qingshan took out 3 goose yellow pills. And what are these? Although he did not know alchemy, he could feel that the spiritual energy contained in these 3 pills was very special. It was extremely pure, yet exceptionally gentle and calm. It did not seem like pills used for cultivation. Qian Rongji said, "These are innate pills. They are worth much more than Pearl Dew pills, but they are not meant for Qi practitioners." Li Qingshan was very clear about the value of Pearl Dew pills. They were something that countless Qi practitioners fought over. Since these innate pills were not meant for Qi practitioners, they were meant for ordinary people. Could it be? Qian Rongji said, "That's right. They are pills that can help ordinary people practice Qi. However, it does not have a 100% success rate. It also depends on one's aptitude. Qian Yannian spent a lot of effort to find one for his beloved son. Even after he ingested it, he was still unable to advance to the innate realm. That's why only the big clans would concoct such pills. Li Qingshan understood that if it was not for the fact that they were wealthy and had an endless supply of pills, any Qi practitioner would be more willing to exchange for a few Pearl Dew pills to increase their own cultivation rather than use them to nurture their descendants. He first kept the innate pills and said, "Pick a bottle, consider it as a reward." Without any hesitation, Qian Rongji chose the concealing pill, which happened to be the one that Li Qingshan needed the least. He then kept all the pills and was about to leave. Suddenly, Qian Rongji asked, "Is the child with you?" Qian Rongji said, "I want to see her." Seeing Li Qingshan's hesitation, she took out a bottle of qi-gathering pills. Li Qingshan said, "I won't trade her." His calm words sounded like the ringing of a bell in Qian Rongji's ears. The hand that was holding the qi-gathering pills suddenly didn't know where to put it. She even felt ashamed of herself. Forcing a smile, she said, "You're all very lucky." Her smile revealed an indescribable envy and jealousy, and even a hint of sadness. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. He called little N in, but she said, "There's no need. You can leave." After Li Qingshan left, Qian Rongji leaned against the windowsill, a trace of confusion in her eyes. In her heart, there was an indescribable, extravagant hope that someone would say something like that to her. Just once was enough. But would someone say it? Would she believe it even if he said it? She laughed at herself. In her will, the word trust no longer existed. The unlucky should avoid being too close to the lucky. Otherwise, even this determination would be lost, and there would be nothing left of her. She had long since stopped praying for luck. Kneeling on the ground and praying to the heavens was useless, no matter how many times she tried. Praying to others was also useless. It would only encourage their smiles. Everything had to be won with her own two hands. She looked at her right hand. It was beautiful and fair, with 5 sharp fingers. Her eyes gradually regained their calm, indifferent calmness. The corner of her mouth curled into a cold arc. Her right hand suddenly clenched. Tear the smiles in the sky to pieces. Ha ha. Chapter 195. Diving underground once more, Li Qingshan found a huge karst cave with the help of the underground mental map. He said to little N, "Looks like we'll have to work hard for a while. This place can't compare to Salt Mountain City." "All right." Little N replied obediently. Her voice was muffled and soft. Apart from the first cry, she couldn't say anything else clearly. However, it was still very pleasant to listen to, like a spring breeze caressing one's face, making one's heart feel at ease. In a forest of stalagmites, Li Qingshan checked the elixirs. Half of the qi deposition pills had already been used, leaving only about 4,000. He had only used 100 herb pill, leaving about 1,000. As for the high-grade elixirs that could be used for cultivation, there were close to 100 of them. The resources could be considered plentiful. Li Qingshan kept a talisman close to his body. This talisman was called a message talisman, and there were 2 of them. As long as one was within 1,000 miles, the other would respond when triggered. Although it couldn't transmit complicated information, it was enough to send a signal. As for what method Qian Rongji was going to use to lure Grandma Shimen out, Li Qingshan didn't ask. She had to adapt to the situation. In any case, this woman was incomparably familiar with such things. He wasn't worried that she would betray him. Although she didn't have any morals to speak of, she always put profit first, which made her easy to guess. If she betrayed him, just based on the fact that she had colluded with the enemy, the sect wouldn't let her off. He just needed to wait quietly at the right place at the right time. This reminded him of a fairy tale he had read in his previous life. The tiger caught the fox, and the fox said that as long as the tiger didn't eat him, he would bring other animals over. However, the prerequisite for all of this was that the tiger had the ability to eat the animals that the fox brought. He tilted his head back, poured the qi deposition pills into his mouth, and began to cultivate. 6 days later, Li Qingshan began to miss his manor in Salt Mountain City. Not only did he miss the delicious food and wine, but it was also because of little N. In this empty cave, there was nothing for little N to do. Whenever she was bored, she would prop up her cheeks and watch him cultivate. This made Li Qingshan feel very guilty, and he often had to stop his cultivation to play with her for a while. If he were alone, then it did not matter what he did. Even if he used the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression and went into seclusion for a year or so, it would be nothing. But as long as she was by his side, he wanted to make her live a comfortable life as much as possible. Looking around, all he could see were dark and barren rocks. It was nothing like his ideal place. It was not beneficial to the mental health of children. Li Qingshan made up his mind. Since there's nothing else here, let's go back and take a look. That millipede must have run out of patience and left. The villa was quiet, but the autumn was getting stronger. Li Qingshan pushed open the front door and went straight to the back garden. He pushed aside the sparse vegetation and looked into the cave. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. Millipede's eyes were closed as he lay in the cave. He seemed to be dead, as if he hadn't moved at all. Suddenly, he snapped open his slightly protruding eyes. He stared straight at Li Qingshan and said with a muffled voice, "Where's the food?" He completely failed to realize that Li Qingshan had stood him up. Li Qingshan grinned. "I'm coming." Afterwards, he turned around and left with little Anne. He was uncertain whether it was because he had been moved by his gluttonous spirit, or perhaps it was because he was just too easy to fool, which made him feel rather uneasy. In the proud sword manner, Yu Shuquang looked at Li Qingshan in surprise and joy. "Great hero Nyo. You finally returned." Li Qingshan nodded. Yep, I'm back. There's something else I need to trouble you with." Yu Shuquang saw how cautious he was, so he said emotionally, "Feel free to tell me, great hero Nyo. Whether it's climbing a mountain of blades or plunging into a pot of boiling oil." Li Qingshan interrupted him. "It's not that serious. Prepare 3 items for me and deliver them to the villa." "You mean?" Yu Shuquang could not imagine what items Li Qingshan would ask for. Even if he wanted it, it should not be him. "Millet, rice, alcohol." Li Qingshan took out another 1,000,000 taels of silver and slammed it on the table. "That's it?" Yu Shuquang was so surprised that his jaw almost fell off. He was asking for regular food from him in such a formal manner. Li Qingshan said, "Prepare some other grains, fruits, and vegetables. The more the better. Of course, you can't skip the 20 banquets every day either. You have to do this as discreetly as possible. Don't let too many people know about it." "Don't worry, great hero Nyo. I'll send people to prepare it immediately. I'll have as much as you need." Yu Shuquang patted his chest and guaranteed. As the chief of the Jianghu, even if he could not find anything else, obtaining some food was a piece of cake. Li Qingshan said in a seemingly unintentional manner, "Oh right, I obtained a few innate pills recently." With that he turned around and left. The speaker had intentions, while the listener obviously had even more intentions. Yu Shuquang's eyes slowly widened. As a person of the Jianghu, he did not know a lot about the thousands of pills that Qi practitioners possessed. However, there was one that he absolutely had to know about, and that was the innate pill. It was the holy pill that all martial artists yearned for. Who did not want to ascend to the heavens in a single step and set foot in a brand new realm of cultivation. Yu Shuquang wanted it too, and it was not just any random thought. The 3 words that Li Qingshan had casually mentioned were like a carrot tied to the front of a donkey. Even if he knew he would not be able to eat it, he still wanted to give it a try. Not to mention that Li Qingshan had sounded like he could give him one. He immediately gathered a few of his trusted disciples and passed down orders sternly. If it were not for the fact that Li Qingshan had told him to do it discreetly, he almost could not help but carry out this matter personally so that Li Qingshan could see his performance. The efficiency of a powerful local organization was startlingly high when it began operating. An hour later, the items that Li Qingshan wanted began to arrive endlessly. "Catch!" Li Qingshan picked up a bag of rice and tossed it into the hole. Millipede extended his hand and tore at it. The crystalline rice flowed out with a rustle. His mouth widened to an exaggerated degree, which made Li Qingshan think of a character in a cartoon. In the blink of an eye, a bag of rice had flowed into his mouth. He smacked his lips. Delicious. Afterwards, he continued to stare at Li Qingshan. Eat more if it's delicious. Once you're full, don't bother me. Li Qingshan casually tossed down another bag of rice. Millipede only cared about eating the rice. He did not have the energy to pay attention to him. Another bag of rice went down his stomach, but he still looked as if he had not had enough. Li Qingshan simply tossed down dozens of bags of rice. The charm of the innate pellet had far exceeded Li Qingshan's imagination. Following that, rice, flour, and all sorts of other foodstuffs were delivered by the disciples of the proud sword manor. There were also all sorts of fruits and vegetables, some of which even Li Qingshan did not know the names of. Li Qingshan held a few bags of rice in his arms and a few more on his shoulders. He was like a super dock porter, running back and forth between the front door and the back garden, tossing bag after bag of foodstuffs into the hole. Millipede, who always had a wooden expression, was currently grinning from ear to ear. As a glutton, he saw all sorts of foodstuffs falling from the sky. His mood was similar to that of a money grubber who saw gold and silver coins falling like rain. He was dazzled and did not know what to eat first. Li Qingshan wiped the sweat off his forehead and said to Little N, "Keep an eye on things. I'm going to cultivate for a while. Remember not to go into the cave. Be careful that I don't eat you too." Little N obviously did not take these words to heart. He agreed with a smile and squatted by the entrance of the cave, watching Millipede eat. He found it very interesting. In the evening, the 20 tables of food that Li Qingshan had requested arrived. He brought them to the entrance of the cave and sat down. He opened the food box and began wolfing down the food. It had to be said that watching Millipede eat was very appetizing. Li Qingshan ate above the cave, while Millipede ate below. Little N looked down at Millipede and up at Li Qingshan, finding it very interesting. After transforming into a fiendish demon, they could use heaven and earth yuan qi as a substitute for food. Even if they didn't eat for a long time, with the amount of heaven and earth yuan qi a fiendish demon general could absorb, they could still survive even if they cut off their source of food. However, his instinctive appetite would not disappear. It would only grow stronger with time. Humans chose to go without food because there was too much foul air in the 5 grains. It would affect cultivation if it accumulated in their stomachs. However, the cultivation path and constitution of demons were completely different from that of humans. For demons, eating and drinking to their fill was never a bad thing. Their powerful bodies could absorb and digest any foul air. The process of human cultivation was like a sculptor carving an exquisite piece of art. He would carefully choose the most suitable cultivation method and the most suitable pill. Then, he would meticulously divide the cultivation process into many steps and slowly advance towards his goal. He wanted everything to be within his control and constantly improve. Only then would he be able to stand above others and become an immortal. The process of cultivation for demons was like a painter casually painting a landscape. It was rough, bold, and free. The painter was not even the demons themselves, but the creation of the world. It was like a strange rock that had been polished by wind, frost, rain, and snow over thousands of years. It just so happened that it had more characteristics than other rocks, and was known as a demon. Millipede's mouth suddenly stopped. He raised his head and looked at Li Qingshan. Snow-white rice dripped down from the corner of his mouth. He said in a muffled voice, "Wine." Li Qingshan was drinking to his heart's content when he noticed Millipede's gaze. He tossed the wine jar in his hand down. "For you." Millipede gulped it down, then asked for more. After tossing down 4 or 5 jars of wine, Li Qingshan had drunk quite a bit as well. In his excitement, he forgot about Little An's warning and jumped down the cave with the food and wine. He raised his jar and knocked it against Millipede's, then tilted his head back and drank to his heart's content. Millipede stared at Li Qingshan in a daze. He had no idea what he was doing. When Li Qingshan had drunk half the jar, he seemed to suddenly realize something. He hurriedly drank his wine, looking at Li Qingshan as he drank. However, he still let Li Qingshan finish his wine first and laughed. Millipede was immediately displeased. He shoved a jar of wine into Li Qingshan's hands, then picked up a jar for himself and clinked it against Li Qingshan's jar. He hurriedly opened his mouth and drank the wine. Chapter 196. The sun set and the moon rose. Moonlight shone into the cave, illuminating the two men as they drank. One was bald and dressed in pink, the other was built like an iron tower. Alcohol was a wonderful thing that could bring people closer, but it had to be drunk. Li Qingshan was drinking to his heart's content. He sat in the pile of grain, smelling the natural fragrance of the grain and letting down his guard. Drinking with the silly millipede was more enjoyable than any banquet he had ever been to. There was no scheming or conflict of interest. Eating was for the sake of eating, and drinking was for the sake of drinking. After drinking over 100 jars of alcohol, the two men's stomachs bulged, and their eyes became hazy. Millipede's shiny bald head was even more dazzling in the moonlight. Li Qingshan couldn't help but reach out to touch it. "You're not bad. You don't have any bad intentions." "No, you don't have any." Millipede smiled foolishly. "You're good too. Underground, do you want to go?" Li Qingshan shook his head like a rattle drum. No, I still have things to do. If you want to eat, come find me. It's my treat." Millipede was a bit disappointed, but after hearing Li Qingshan's words, he said yes. Suddenly, his eyes became hazy, and he fell to the ground, snoring like thunder. Li Qingshan laughed and scolded him. "You eat and sleep and eat after you're full. You don't have any distracting thoughts. How enviable." He raised his head and yawned, sinking his body into the golden grains of millet. The mountain of millet collapsed, covering most of his body like a blanket. He also fell into a deep sleep. Little and came down and cleaned up the leftovers. He squatted at the entrance of the cave, keeping watch for Li Qingshan. In a daze, Li Qingshan realized he had become a child again. His small hands and feet, wearing clothes full of patches, he ran wildly through the boundless wilderness, chasing the sun in the sky. Sweat poured down, but he didn't wipe it. His feet were pierced by sharp stones, but he didn't care either. He tripped and fell to the ground. He rolled over and got up from the ground. Without stopping, he stared at the sun in the sky. A huge green mountain blocked his way. He couldn't stop in time and bumped into the mountain. However, it wasn't as hard as he had imagined. An incomparably huge bull head stretched out from the side of the mountain. It looked at him with its moist eyes and said in a booming voice, "What's the rush? It's not like the sun will run away." Startled, he climbed up the back of the ox that was like a mountain ridge and looked at the sun in the sky. The sun really did not run away. He touched his waist and found a bamboo flute. It was rough but familiar. He picked it up and played it. The sun and moon alternated. The warm noon sun hung lazily in the sky, shining its warm light into the cave. Li Qingshan opened his eyes and yawned. He saw that Millipede was still asleep. He had no idea when he would wake up. Leaping out of the hole, he felt refreshed. The autumn scenery in the distant mountains was pleasant, making him feel refreshed and carefree. It seemed like he hadn't felt so relaxed in a long time. Ever since he came to this dangerous place in Jiaping, he was surrounded by enemies and danger at every step. He could only continuously cultivate and break through again. Even when he was sleeping, he would think about how to increase his cultivation and how to deal with his enemies. The string in his heart had been stretched taut, and a lot of fatigue had accumulated in his heart. Even he himself didn't notice it. After drinking to his heart's content and having a great dream, the string finally relaxed. Thinking back to last night's dream, he laughed and said to himself, "Yes, what's the rush?" He took out the long-forgotten flute from the depths of his 100 treasures pouch. The sound of the flute echoed in the autumn mountains. Millipede opened his eyes and listened quietly. From that day onwards, noticed that Li Qingshan smiled more often and played the flute more often. He would often pull her along and ask her to teach him how to write, or take her for a stroll in the nearby forest of withered leaves. As they walked, he would suddenly stop and look at Little N with a solemn expression. Little N immediately became nervous. She clenched her fists and thought to herself, "It's coming." Li Qingshan's lips quickly opened and closed. "Eat grapes without spitting out the grape skin. Don't eat grapes until you spit out the grape skin." Little N hurriedly stammered, "Eat grapes without spitting out the grape skin. Don't eat grapes until you spit out the grape skin." This was a trick that Li Qingshan had come up with to train her to speak. It was called, Qingshan, teach me jingles. But now Li Qingshan was completely immersed in seeing her red face and the cute sight of her lisping out the jingle. He reached out and pinched her little face. That's what you get for laughing at my ugly handwriting. Little and turned her head away in annoyance, not letting him pinch her. However, she was in an extremely good mood. Although being obedient did not affect his cultivation, she still yearned for his concern and not to be separated by a stone door. Holy Church in reality, Li Qingshan did not stop cultivating. He still ate the pills every day, but he was much less nervous now. No matter what he did, he paid attention to the path of relaxation. If he was always tense on a daily basis, it would be easy for him to be overly nervous when something big happened, and his mind would not be as sharp. Moreover, his responsibility was not just to protect her. Before he knew it, more than a month had passed. All the qi-gathering pills had been used up, and the demonic aura on Li Qingshan's body had reached an unprecedented level. There was still no news from Qian Rongji, but he was not anxious. Instead, he began to eat the 100 herb pills. The first snow of the year came very early. When the first snowflake landed on the tip of Li Qingshan's nose, he was staring at Millipede like a tiger watching its prey. He was glaring at Millipede fiercely, while Millipede was looking at Xiaoan nervously. More accurately, he was looking at the dice cup in Xiaoan's hand. A few wine jars were turned upside down, forming a table. There were bowls of wine on it. Li Qingshan and Millipede sat opposite each other. Little and sat at the side, acting as the dealer. Little and rolled up her sleeves, revealing her lotus-like arms. She smiled and opened the dice cup. Li Qingshan laughed. 15 points, drink. He grabbed a handful of peanuts from the pile of food beside him, peeled them, and tossed them into his mouth. Millipede chuckled, picking up the wine bowl and drinking. Compared to the first time Li Qingshan saw him, he was much more energetic and a little chubbier. Little and picked up a long peanut kernel and said to Millipede, "Does it look like you?" Her words were clear, like the tinkling of spring water or the humming of a zither. "That Qingshan will teach you jingles." Homeschooling had achieved initial success. Millipede looked at himself, then at the peanuts, and nodded. "Yes." Here. Little and placed the peanut kernel in Millipede's palm. Millipede immediately tossed it into his mouth. "You ate yourself." Li Qingshan was about to say something, but his expression froze. Little and immediately turned to look at Li Qingshan. "Come on." Her jingles were spoken even faster than Li Qingshan's. Li Qingshan smiled at her and took out the messaging talisman. The talisman burned quickly, turning into ashes in the blink of an eye, scattering with the wind. Qian Rongji's message had finally arrived. Li Qingshan stood up abruptly, and so did Millipede. His mouth was wide open, his face full of shock. Li Qingshan pressed down on his shoulder and pushed him back down. "I'm going out to do something. I'll be back soon." Li Qingshan didn't ask for Millipede's help, nor did he plan to use him against the door. He was a great drinking buddy, and that was all. He had to take care of his own business. Li Qingshan and Little and one big and one small disappeared from the cave. Little and even turned around and waved at him. Millipede sat there in a daze. Suddenly, he felt a sense of emptiness in his heart. Snowflakes fell into his bowl of wine. He took a bite of his favorite rice, but it seemed to have lost some of its flavor. He scratched his bald head in confusion. In the house, Qian Rongji was deep in thought with a frown. She went through the plan in detail, including how to start, how to deal with the aftermath, and how to escape if they failed. She made sure there were no loopholes. Suddenly, she raised an eyebrow and turned around. "You're finally here." Li Qingshan happened to be standing behind her. Apart from the fact that he still seemed extremely sturdy, he had basically returned to his original state. This was the result of strengthening his cultivation of the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression recently. He saw the unusual black wolf uniform on her with a single glance. "You're a black wolf commander now?" Qian Rongji stood up and spun around, showing off. "How is it? Not bad, right?" "Not bad. Thank you. Looks like you've been doing well recently." "It's been all right." They greeted each other like old friends, using fake etiquette to maintain their fragile alliance. Before Li Qingshan could ask, Qian Rongji said, "The fish has already taken the bait. According to your request, I'm only fishing for the west gate." Li Qingshan asked in confusion, "How did you do it?" Luring people out of the door was not difficult, but luring out Grandma Shimin without alerting the other people outside was anything but simple. Qian Rongji did not explain. She gently stroked the black wolf tablet on her waist and smiled. "This is my job. It's all up to you now. If I don't get what I want, I won't let it go. As long as you do your job, you obviously don't have to worry about me." With absolute confidence, Li Qingshan adjusted himself to a peak condition. He needed a battle. His relaxed nerves were gradually being pulled taut as his battle intent rose up. Qian Rongji changed the topic. "Though, I still have to prepare for the worst. Before we confirm the number of enemies, I'd advise you to hide your presence properly." Li Qingshan narrowed his eyes. Qian Rongji said calmly, "No plan is absolutely perfect. Even I can't eliminate all accidents. I don't need to say more about this. Before thinking about victory, think about failure." Of course. Even if Qian Rongji did not say it, Li Qingshan would also prepare for the worst and not completely trust her. She said this to clarify that even if something unexpected happened, it was not her who wanted to harm him. Li Qingshan smiled. "Anyway, you only have one life. Cherish it." "Of course." Qian Rongji also smiled. She knew that no matter what she said, she would not be able to deceive Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan did not expect that the place Qian Rongji chose would be here. He lifted the edge of the bamboo hat and looked at the towering Qian family's mansion. It was normal for her to choose a place she was familiar with. However, she had killed nearly 1,000 people here. Ordinary people would avoid it, but she did not. Everything was the best choice. Li Qingshan came to the other side of the mountain and found a cave entrance in the withered grass and fallen leaves. He entered it and gradually widened. In the end, it became a huge natural cave. Li Qingshan measured the height and even tried to transform. Then he began to make preparations. He constantly observed the cave. First, he pasted 7 talismans on the hidden stalagmite at the top of the cave. Then, he passed the talismans to little N. Even a lion would use all its strength to catch a rabbit. Moreover, this time, it was an extremely dangerous beast. Chapter 197. You sure cultivate quickly. Grandma Shimin squinted her eyes and studied Qian Rongji. Her eyes were filled with deep doubt. The sacred church. A few young men gathered around Grandma Shimin, massaging her limbs. As they looked at Qian Rongji in the valiant uniform of a Black Wolf commander, they were filled with jealousy. Qian Rongji knelt down and begged, "Rongji only obtained the demon's demon core by chance, which is why she's like this. However, it's not a long-term plan at the end of the day. Please accept me back under your wing, Granny. I definitely won't disappoint you." Grandma Shimin gently stroked the face of a handsome young man. "If what you said is true, it's not like I can't consider it. Granny does like you very much." She felt extremely delighted to be bowed to by a Black Wolf commander. The handsome young man looked at Qian Rongji arrogantly, as if Qian Rongji was kneeling to him. Qian Rongji was overjoyed. Rongji definitely isn't lying. When I became a Black Wolf commander, I discovered through the informants of the Hawk Wolf Guard that Li Qingshan had once appeared in ancient Wine City with that child. I specially sent people to investigate, and we only found where he was hiding after great difficulty. Not only does he possess the zombie Daoist's 100 treasures pouch, but it's very likely that Zhuozhibwa and the other Hawk Wolf Guards were harmed by him too. He possesses wealth worth several thousand spiritual stones at the very least. Granny definitely won't be disappointed. This was her scheme. If a measly Qi practitioner possessed great wealth and another powerful Qi practitioner learnt about it, they obviously would not contact their companions. Instead, they would find a way to keep the wealth for themselves. Just when Grandma Shimin's wrinkled face blossomed into a smile, an old voice rang out from outside, "Old woman, how could you forget about your younger sister when you have such great benefits?" Grandma Shimin's expression suddenly changed, while Qian Rongji's heart sank. It was Grandma Dongman's voice. The East Gate granny leisurely walked in, a delighted smile on her face. Grandma Ximen and Grandma Dongmen had always been enemies. They paid attention to each other's movements at all times. As soon as Grandma Ximen left the prefectural city, Grandma Dongmen sensed her. Suspicious, she tailed her silently. The people who pay the most attention to you are not your friends, but your enemies. Grandma Dongmen ignored Grandma Ximen's gloomy face and said to Qian Rongji, "Qian girl, take us there quickly. That guy is very alert. We can't listen to someone's stupid idea and waste a few days." The Great Wall. Qian Rongji looked at Grandma Ximen awkwardly. Grandma Ximen said with a calm face, "Let's go." Since things had come to this point, it was useless to be angry. She could only take it as a comeback for this old thing. The three of them arrived in the mountains behind ancient Wind City and stopped outside a pitch-black cave. Qian Rongji said, "Grandma, Li Qingshan should be hiding in there. Lead the way." Yes. The blow from the failure of her plan did not throw her off balance, nor did she reveal any openings. She planned carefully. As long as she could prove that Li Qingshan had indeed appeared in ancient Wind City, the two old women should not vent their anger on her too much. And, before she left, she specially told the eagle leader she trusted that she was going to ancient Wind City with them to investigate the disappearance of Hawkwolf guards. It was basically a protective talisman. If she did not succeed once, there would always be a next time. As long as she kept trying, there would always be a time when she would succeed. Following the winding path, he continued forward until he reached the huge cave. Qian Rongji's expression suddenly changed drastically. She almost cursed aloud. Li Qingshan did not hide his presence. He just sat down on a boulder and meditated casually. Grandma Ximen and Grandma Dongmen walked past her. Grandma Dongmen even patted her shoulder and said, "Well done." She did not notice her pale face. Qian Rongji said with some difficulty, "Please capture that Li Qingshan, grannies. I'll wait outside for now." Grandma Ximen nodded without minding it at all. She only looked at Li Qingshan. "Go wait in the carriage. We'll be out very soon." Grandma Dongmen's eyes lit up. "Old woman, go easy on him. It's rare to see a child as strong as him. Let me try the vitality devouring technique again." The vitality devouring technique. Grandma Ximen's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Qian Rongji's back in thought. Qian Rongji sensed the sword-like gaze sweep past her, but she did not move faster. Holy Church Grandma Ximen suppressed her suspicions. She turned around and scolded, "I knew you're going to be horny. I'll give this kid to you. I'll take 10% more of his belongings." Grandma Dongmen agreed with a creepy smile. She looked at Li Qingshan with an extremely greedy expression. "But don't suck it dry. We still have to ask about Ingjia's whereabouts and that beautiful child." Grandma Ximen looked around. She could not find little and didn't Wei Zhongyun ask Ma Bai to do the divination? That unlucky child is probably dead. The murderer should be in the north. It's most likely this kid. Qian Rongji's heart trembled. There was actually such an exquisite divination technique in the world. If it was not for Li Qingshan, she would have been exposed long ago. She made her way out of the cave in a single breath. As if she was exhausted, she leaned against the stone wall and sat down slowly. She slammed the wall viciously, leaving behind a deep handprint. If Li Qingshan were captured, then the matter of her killing Wei Yingjie would definitely be exposed. She would have to face the wrath of a 10th-layer Qi practitioner, or even the entire sect. The Hawkwolf Guard could not protect her, nor would they protect her. All she could do now was flee immediately. The further she fled, the better. However, the world was so vast, so where could she run to? She could only flee underground like Li Qingshan. Why didn't Li Qingshan flee? Look at that woman. No matter how high her cultivation is, she's like a dog. The carriage stopped nearby, in an empty clearing with sparse vegetation. A few handsome young men gathered together, pointing at the disheveled Qian Rongji. "You're the dogs." Qian Rongji glanced at them scornfully. The young men were stunned. The youths were stunned. One of them angrily said, "You actually dare to talk back?" Another sinisterly said, Just because of this sentence, Granny can cut you into 1,000 pieces. They were relying on the West Gate Granny, a big tree. Normally, no one would dare to say even half a word of complaint to them. Qian Rongji smiled. But the old granny isn't here right now. She walked over with her water-splitting barb. Even if she was fleeing, she had to drag a few of them down with her. What are you trying to do? The young men were fearful. They backed away slowly, turning around and fleeing towards the carriage. Qian Rongji swung her hand, and there was a flash of light. All 8 of their legs were severed at the base. The horse neighed a few times uneasily and raised its hooves. Qian Rongji glanced at it, and it immediately quietened down. However, there were some who couldn't calm down. A few young men were rolling on the ground, screaming in pain. Qian Rongji skillfully stopped their bleeding. She channeled a stream of innate qi into each of them, so that they could stay awake and not faint from the pain. They could enjoy the torture. You bitch, Granny will definitely kill you. Just you wait. Bah. The young man in red cried and cursed. The water-splitting barb slashed across his face, cutting off his nose and completely destroying his handsome face. Qian Rongji patted his bloody face. I hope your granny will continue to love you, ugly noseless ghost. The other 3 young men didn't dare to curse anymore. They looked at Qian Rongji with fear and resentment. Their beautiful faces were the most important thing to them. They might be able to recover if their legs were cut off, but once their faces were destroyed, they would completely lose their granny's love. Then, shrill screams like those of evil spirits resounded in the forest. Qian Rongji cut off another 3 noses and crushed them, cutting off all their hopes. She didn't choose to run away. Instead, she faced the cave not far away and sat down amidst the screams. If Grandma Shimin came out and saw her beloved gigolo in such a state, she would definitely tear her into pieces. However, she had completely calmed down. She knew what kind of person Li Qingshan was. Since he didn't run away, he must be confident that he wouldn't run away. Since he dared to fight, why wouldn't she? At worst, she would just die. Having come this far, she had already disregarded life and death. She would never take a step back. Qian Rongji's guess was right. Li Qingshan was indeed fighting. When he smelled 2 scents entering the cave, he knew that there was a problem with the plan. However, it shouldn't be Qian Rongji's plot. If she wanted to harm him, she could have summoned all the people in the clan. If it was just Grandma Shimin, he was confident that he could win. However, if Grandma Dongmen was added to the mix, his chances of winning would fall to less than 70%. If he didn't dare to fight when he had 70% confidence, could he still be considered a man? Therefore, he didn't hide. Instead, he sat there and adjusted every inch of his body to its best state. He was like a ferocious tiger preparing to hunt, quietly waiting for the prey to approach. Li Qingshan glanced at the pale-faced Qian Rongji and confirmed his conjecture. When he heard how the 2 old ghosts spoke again, they basically treated him like a piece of meat on a chopping block. As he moved, his murderousness rose up. Grandma Shimin looked at Li Qingshan, who was sitting still, and said strangely, "This brat isn't running away? He must be scared silly. Don't be afraid, good boy. Grandma won't hurt you." Grandma Dongmen smiled coquettishly as she used her arts of charm. No matter how impressive body-tempering arts were, it was still a piece of cake for her with her strength as a 3rd-layer qi practitioner. Grandma Shimin sneered. She knew that the arts of charm were not very effective against Li Qingshan, but she purposefully did not warn Grandma Dongmen. She was waiting for her to make a fool of herself. Li Qingshan laughed aloud, shaking up the entire cave. The spirit turtle's demon core bobbed up and down in his body, suppressing all stray thoughts. Grandma Dongmen was surprised. "What are you laughing at?" Li Qingshan stopped laughing. "2 old and ugly monsters, yet you're acting coquettishly like a little girl. How laughable. Even if you can fool others, can you fool yourself? Why don't you look in the mirror and count how many wrinkles you have?" That immediately stabbed the 2 grannies where it hurt the most. They hated people mentioning their appearance and age the most. Grandma Dongmen was furious. "Brat, you're looking to die." With a wave of her hand, a tremendous, pitch-black true qi turned into a huge black wave and swept towards Li Qingshan. Bang, 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 bang. The thick stalagmites in the path of the true qi were smashed to pieces. Rubble flew everywhere like a huge, black snake slithering on the ground. It arrived before Li Qingshan in the blink of an eye. It raised its head high and bit down viciously. With a great rumble, the boulder Li Qingshan sat on was smashed to pieces. Chapter 198. I've trained before. In addition to the 5 elemental energies, there were also yin and yang energies, which were collectively known as the mysterious yin energy and the mysterious yang energy. This sect cultivated both yin and yang energy. Men cultivated the mysterious yang energy, and women cultivated the mysterious yin energy. Their energies were black and white, and when cultivated to the extreme yin energy gave birth to yang energy, and the extreme yang energy gave birth to yin energy. Pronounce H'un after me H'un H'un. Please bear in mind that not only is this not an evil technique, it is an orthodox Taoist technique. The yin and yang qi were ever-changing, and the cultivation methods they produced surpassed the true qi of the 5 elements. Moreover, their attributes varied greatly. The zombie Taoist practiced profound yin true qi, but his profound yin true qi was only for refining and nurturing corpses. It did not have the ability to bewitch people or steal their essence. Li Qingshan was secretly shocked. The Xian yin qi had never been known for its ferocity, yet it could have such an effect. 9th-layer qi practitioners were indeed not easy to deal with. Suddenly, a shadow enveloped Li Qingshan. A giant black hand viciously grabbed at him. Grandma Shimin opened her right hand and said gloomily, "Let's see where you can run to this time." "Why should I run?" Li Qingshan said proudly. He spread his hands apart and took out the cursive sword calligraphy. Incomparably pure true qi surged madly into it, and the strokes were like blades and swords, lighting up one by one. The last time he tried out the cursive sword calligraphy was in Qingyang City. The innate method of practicing qi was only at the 2nd layer, but now that he had reached the 7th layer, his true qi had increased by more than 10-fold. A total of 21 strokes lit up on the cursive sword calligraphy, stabbing into the black hand. Sword qi shot out, and the black hand disintegrated inch by inch. A top-grade spiritual weapon. Grandma Shimin was shocked and shouted, "Black mud vortex." The thick black true qi formed a huge vortex in front of her. It spun at high speed, as if it wanted to swallow everything. This was the strongest protective spell that Grandma Shimin knew, and she was confident that it could withstand the bombardment of any qi practitioner's spells. 21 strands of sword qi pierced into the black vortex at the same time, and the vortex immediately stirred. Grandma Shimin's face was solemn. She operated the spell with all her strength, and the black mud vortex rotated at an extremely fast speed, shattering and annihilating the 21 sword qi. With a roar, the genuine qi vortex collapsed. Grandma Shimin lowered her body, and a sword light flashed past her shoulder, bringing out a splash of blood. Li Qingshan immediately took out a piece of spirit stone. The pure heaven and earth essence qi slowly flowed into his body through his palm, and his true qi quickly recovered. He was also shocked. Originally, he only wanted to block the attack of the big black hand and take the opportunity to escape. He didn't expect the cursive sword 9 astronomy. Advertisement for Zhongwen words. TXT download, Supreme Spiritual Weapon? Grandma Shimin's expression changed drastically. This cursive sword calligraphy wasn't complete, so even Grandma Shimin couldn't determine its rank. She only knew that it was extraordinary. Her embarrassment turned into anger, and she also felt extremely greedy. "This thing is mine, old woman. Don't fight with me." Grandma Dongmin's eyes lit up. She closed her eyes, held a spell with both hands, and chanted. The profound yin true qi all returned to her side, and it surged like black water as if it was alive. A sense of danger rose in Li Qingshan's heart. It must be an extraordinary spell for a level 9 qi practitioner to spend so much effort to prepare. But instead of retreating, he advanced. Holding the wind-entwining saber with a backhand, the acupoints under his feet produced a cushion-like true qi, and he stepped on the stone wall as if he was walking on flat ground. He took 7 steps in a row, and jumped above Grandma Dongmen's head. With a flash of cold light, the wind-entwining saber was unsheathed with a clang and slashed down with the momentum of splitting a mountain. Grandma Ximen's spell had just been broken, and she couldn't save him in time. Or rather, she didn't want to save him at all. She had just made a fool of herself in front of Grandma Dongmen, and she certainly had to make up for it now. She just stood by and watched, thinking, this kid's body refining technique is really powerful. Together with that supreme spiritual weapon, if he suddenly attacks, maybe even a level 6 Qi practitioner will fall into his trap. Grandma Dongmen suddenly opened her eyes, clenched her hands, and pointed at Li Qingshan with her index and middle fingers. Snake binding curse. The black true Qi turned into thousands of pitch-black snakes and swarmed up, but the momentum alone was enough to frighten ordinary people. The wind-entwining saber was entangled by dozens of black snakes, and it couldn't move an inch forward as if it was stuck in a swamp. His body was also entangled by layers of snakes, leaving only a human shape. Li Qingshan focused his mind and put all his strength on the wind-entwining saber. His eyes passed through the black true Qi and stared at the top of Grandma Dongmen's head, and he shouted, "Break!" His arms suddenly expanded violently and turned green. The demonic energy broke through the black snake's restraint, and he slashed down violently. Grandma Dongmen, who had just put on a complacent smile, suddenly froze. This is... Grandma Ximen also noticed that something was wrong. She took out a small crimson needle. Although the needle was small, it was very bright. It turned out to be a superior-grade spiritual weapon. There weren't many superior-grade spiritual weapons in the first place, and needles were even rarer, so it was more difficult to refine. Once it was refined, it would be extremely powerful. Not only was it extremely fast and stealthy, but it could also break through all protective true Qi and spells. In a fight, it could instantly kill a Qi practitioner without a protective spiritual weapon. The flying needle pulled out a thin red line and almost reached first, stabbing at Li Qingshan's head. One of the skull prayer beads flew over and hit the flying needle. The other turned into a huge skull and bit at Grandma Ximen. Little and rushed out of the floating soil and jumped out of the darkness, stabbing at Grandma Dongmen's back. 3 talismans were stuck on her hands, feet, and sword, increasing her speed, strength, and lethality to the highest level, just to launch this fatal attack. Li Qingshan pretended to be weak in order to find an opportunity to form such a killing momentum. If he could kill one of the grannies first, he would definitely win this battle. Layers of light emitted from Grandma Dongmen's body, enveloping her whole body. The saber slashed and the sword stabbed, making 2 loud bangs. The light trembled, but it didn't break. Li Qingshan and Little and took advantage of the counterforce and jumped back lightly. A nick appeared on each of the saber and the sword. They both felt regretful. Grandma Dongmen had an extremely powerful protective spiritual weapon. The East Gate Granny shrieked and flew to the side. It had been many years since she had experienced such a life-threatening crisis. If she hadn't spent a large sum of money to buy a middle-grade spirit artifact, the luminous heart-protecting mirror, she would have almost died a violent death. When she looked at the luminous heart-protecting mirror again, she saw 2 deep marks on it, and its spiritual energy had been greatly reduced. She was both shocked and furious. Looking at Li Qingshan, he was already 3 meters tall. His body was as black as iron, and there were 2 horns protruding from his forehead. His red hair hung down to his waist. She shouted, "There's something wrong with this kid. Attack with all your strength." She raised her hand, and a comb flew out of her sleeve. It expanded in the wind and flew toward Li Qingshan. The comb was shining with spiritual light. It was also a high-grade spiritual weapon. She didn't expect this kid to be so difficult to deal with. Even the beautiful child was very strange. But she believed that as long as they were serious, Li Qingshan would definitely be no match for 2 9th-layer aura-refining cultivators and 2 high-grade spiritual weapons. However, she saw Li Qingshan take out a talisman. She could tell at a glance that it was a mid-grade thunder-summoning talisman. She sneered in her heart. It wasn't a thunderstorm, so this mid-grade thunder-summoning talisman couldn't even penetrate her protective true Qi. She was sure that Li Qingshan had exhausted all his tricks. Li Qingshan smiled slightly. His killing move wasn't over yet. The thunder summoning talisman was activated, but it did not strike Grandma Dongmen. Instead, it turned into countless tiny bolts of electricity, illuminating the pitch-black cavern. It also illuminated the 8 talismans Li Qingshan had stuck on them. The electricity flowed through them. The 8 talismans were activated at the same time, forming a scorching bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket. It struck Grandma Dongmen in the air. Her weak protective true qi was unable to stop it at all. It was pierced in a single stroke, and her radiant heart-protecting mirror shattered immediately. She shrieked out and fell out of the air as smoke rose from her body. What a vicious kid! Grandma Shimon's face darkened when she saw this. Deep wrinkles appeared on her face. She used a high-grade golden shell talisman to block the skulls that spewed flames. At the same time, she controlled the flying needle to stab Li Qingshan again. It was both swift and urgent. Even the skull prayer beads were unable to catch up. Li Qingshan's face narrowed. He expanded to 10 meters tall and extended his hand to grab the out-of-control comb. He released the spirit turtle's profound shell. With a clang, the flying needle stabbed into the spirit turtle's profound shell and became stuck, unable to advance any further. Grandma Shimon was surprised. Her flying needle had actually failed to penetrate the protective technique. When she looked at Li Qingshan's terrifying figure again, an idea flashed through her head. She cursed aloud, "This is that little bitch's trap." At the same time, Little N arrived before Grandma Dongmen and stabbed down with his sword, giving her no time to catch her breath. With a clang, the sword landed on a patch of golden light. At that critical moment, Grandma Dongmen stuck a high-grade golden shell talisman on herself. High-grade talismans were extremely precious. They were reluctant to use them unless they had no other choice. Little N was emotionless. The hidden blade stabbed down like a storm. His arm had basically become a blur, and the golden light receded bit by bit. Grandma Dongmen was surprised, but she did not panic. She used the opportunity to ingest a healing pill and held a spiritual stone in her hand, recovering her true qi. She was charred all over, but just a few lightning summoning talismans were not enough to kill her. She was utterly furious, powering the spiritual comb desperately. The spiritual comb in Li Qingshan's hand trembled, but how could it rival his strength of 2 oxen? Just when he smiled, there was a sudden flash of light, and several dozen blades of light shot out from the teeth of the comb. They were no weaker than the sword qi from the cursive sword calligraphy. They were all there, unavoidable, and he could not block them with the spirit turtle's profound shell. Clang, 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 clang. There was a series of metallic clangs as the blades of light landed on Li Qingshan's chest. Blood sprayed everywhere. Little and did not even look at it. His attacks became even more violent. The thin hidden blade could not be used anymore, becoming riddled with cracks. Grandma Dongmen's golden shell talisman had been weakened to the limit as well. It was on the verge of shattering. Several dozen terrifying wounds crisscrossed on Li Qingshan's body. Some of them were bone deep, but none of them were fatal. Wounds like that were nothing to demons. With a surge of demon qi, the wounds closed up rapidly and vanished. Grandma Dongmen's complacent smile froze on her face. Impossible! Even demons can't have such tough skin. Little did she know that after Li Qingshan achieved the second layer of the Ox Demon's Fist of Great Strength, his Ox Demon Forge's its hide had reached a new height as well. "I've practiced it." As soon as Li Qingshan said that, he arrived before Grandma Dongmen and threw a punch. Chapter 199. The golden armor talisman was broken. A mysterious smile appeared on Grandma Dongmen's burnt face. She was holding a talisman between her skinny fingers. Huh! Li Qingshan was startled and felt that something was wrong. The talisman was activated. Cold light bloomed and cold air spread everywhere. Ice crawled up Li Qingshan's arm from his fist and sealed his whole body. His fist moved forward with difficulty, but it finally stopped in front of Grandma Dongmen. Li Qingshan's huge body turned into a big ice cube. His face was still full of shock. The terrifying murderous aura that almost suffocated Grandma Dongmen was also frozen in an instant. Little N was not spared either. He was sealed in ice and could not move. Li Qingshan was not the only one who had a trump card and a trump card. Grandma Shimin sneered, "You are finally willing to use this supreme-grade cold wave talisman." She knew Grandma Dongmen had this trump card, so she usually gave her some leeway. Today, she was finally forced to use it. She could not help but feel happy. The East Gate Granny had survived, but her face was filled with sorrow. Who knew how much effort she had put into cultivating for a century before she managed to accumulate a supreme-grade talisman? This was a true talisman that could save her life. Even if she killed Li Qingshan, it probably would not be enough to make up for her losses. She thought fiercely. If she knew this would happen, she would not have come. Wouldn't it be better to let this old man die in the trap? She looked at Li Qingshan again. Her eyes were full of hatred. She wanted to skin him, break his bones, and torture him to death. Grandma Shimin looked at Little N and sighed, "It's a pity for this child. Otherwise, we could erase his original memory and control him with the mind-bewitching spell. We would have one more powerful weapon in our sect." The effect of the cold wave talisman was not only to freeze, but also to freeze the body and destroy the meridians. It was almost equivalent to a strike from a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator, and it was impossible to survive. Grandma Dongmen said, "This child is very strange. It's good that he's dead. This Li Qingshan is actually a monster. How could he hide his monstrous qi so well? He could even pretend to be a qi practitioner." In the blue and white ice, Li Qingshan's eyes suddenly turned. "Holy Church!" Grandma Dongmen exclaimed, "He's not dead yet. Do it now, or we'll all die here today." Grandma Shimin was also shocked. How could this be possible? Thump, thump, thump. Li Qingshan's heart beat like a war drum, faster and faster. His blood vessels expanded, his muscles bulged, and he let out a soundless roar. Crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the ice. Grandma Shimin didn't dare to be careless. She controlled the flying needle and stabbed Li Qingshan's heart with her other hand. She also held a supreme-grade spiritual talisman in her other hand. Suddenly, a streak of golden light shone, dazzling her eyes. Little N turned his frozen flesh and blood back into blazing flames. He stuck a spiritual talisman onto his white bones. It was a high-grade strength talisman of Vajra. A huge golden humanoid broke out of the ice. It had complete facial features and wielded a golden sword. Its effects were definitely not something an inferior spiritual talisman could compare to. At the core of the golden humanoid was a tiny, white skeleton. As it was illuminated by the golden light, it actually faintly shone with a golden hue, giving off a hint of Buddhist aura. It turned around and glared at Grandma Shimin, vaguely giving off the feeling of a Vajra's glare. Grandma Shimin's expression froze. Her mind was shaken, and she was taken aback. She had always cultivated the arts of charm to affect the minds of others, so her mind was naturally powerful. At this moment, she was actually intimidated instead. The path of white bone and great beauty resonated with the strength talisman of Vajra, unleashing unimaginable might. The Vajra warriors were the protectors of the Buddhist kingdom. Even if they were tainted with a sliver of their spirituality, they were definitely not something that any qi practitioner could withstand. Both their strength and mind would be suppressed. The Vajra glared furiously, subduing the 4 demons. The Bodhisattva lowered his eyebrows, showing mercy to the 6 paths. There was no way Little N would let go of such an opportunity. He strode towards Grandma Shimin. The white bones were emotionless, but the Vajra was even more furious. He raised the golden sword high and swung it down with the power to slay all evil. Holy Hall! The threat of death brought Grandma Shimin back to her senses. The golden sword was already inches away from her. She screamed and cast a technique. Profound Yin True Qi surged out of her body and formed a protective barrier of true Qi. She made up her mind and also took out a supreme-grade spiritual talisman. She hesitated for a moment, wondering whether she should retreat immediately or activate that supreme-grade spiritual talisman. The Vajra slashed through the protective barrier of true Qi and severed her hand that held the supreme-grade spiritual talisman. Grandma Shimin clutched her severed arm and cried out in retreat. She wanted to use her true chi to retrieve the talisman, but the Vajra grabbed the talisman with one hand, causing her true chi to miss. Then, it slashed down a second time. She did not dare to stay any longer. She cast a technique to increase her speed and ran out of the cave. However, when she looked up, she saw that Grandma Dongmen was even ahead of her. She could not help but curse in her heart. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Boom! The ice shattered and shot out. Li Qingshan broke out of the ice and shouted, "Where do you think you're going?" He took a step forward and cast the Ox Demon Trample. A crack spread from the soles of his feet and quickly caught up to Grandma Dongmen. However, the target was not her. Smoke and dust rose everywhere. The cave collapsed and completely sealed the cave. Grandma Dongmen had just turned around and did not even have the time to speak. The tiger demon roared and released endless sound waves and wind blades. They swept over and pushed her against the stone wall. Before she could slide down, Li Qingshan caught up. A punch landed on her body. Black mud vortex. Under such circumstances, Grandma Dongmen was still able to cast a technique and offset most of the force. However, she still spat out a mouthful of blood. However, in an instant, Li Qingshan threw out 100 punches and shattered the black mud vortex. He smashed her whole body into the stone wall and turned her into meat paste. When Li Qingshan turned around, he saw that Little and was chasing Grandma Shimin in all directions. With the sharpness of her flying needles, she actually pierced through the golden body. However, she did not injure Little N's well-tempered white bones. Grandma Shimin suddenly felt a pair of red eyes staring at her. The huge figure was approaching quickly, and she was covered in the shadow of death. She could not help but feel desperate. Even without Xiao En's extraordinary performance, Li Qingshan was absolutely confident that he could take on the West Gate Granny 2 against 1. While the West Gate Granny had been forced into a corner by Xiaoen, he reached out with his huge claw and grabbed the West Gate Granny. He tightened his grip, and her protective true chi shattered. The West Gate Granny followed in the East Gate Granny's footsteps. She did not even have the time to shriek before she was crushed to pieces. Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief and showed a bright smile. He had won this fight. Because his demonic chi was of the water attribute, the supreme-grade Cold Wave Talisman did not cause much damage to him. Even so, there were large areas of frostbite on his body. If it had been another supreme-grade talisman, he might have been in danger this time. There were also many mistakes in this battle. First, he did not estimate the power of the cursive sword calligraphy. Otherwise, if he had included it in his plan, he would have had the chance to seriously injure or even kill Grandma Dongmen. Secondly, he underestimated the miraculous effects of the Vajra Titan Talisman on Little N. Of course, there was no need to demand perfection. Li Qingshan was also constantly learning how to fight in battle. In comparison, the West Gate Granny and East Gate Granny had made even more mistakes. If they had been prepared right from the beginning and used their full strength instead of fooling around, Li Qingshan's chances at victory would have dropped to 50% at the very least. It was this kind of careless attitude that gave Li Qingshan the chance to strike first. He did not cooperate at all and only responded in panic under the endless attacks. The result of his defeat was practically written in the beginning. But what 9th-layer Qi practitioner would be serious about a 3rd-layer Qi practitioner? His greatest weapon wasn't the cursive sword calligraphy, nor was it the Vajra strength talisman. Instead, it was his outward weakness. At any time, he could take advantage of an unsuspecting opponent to strike first and seize the initiative. The flames devoured Grandma Shimin and Grandma Dongmen's corpses and returned to Little N's body. Then she slowly condensed a body of flesh and blood. She smiled sweetly at Li Qingshan and handed over 200 treasures pouches, 2 superior-grade spiritual artifacts, and a supreme-grade talisman. Li Qingshan returned to his human form and opened the 100 treasures pouch to take a look. He was shocked. The space inside was vast, something he had never seen before. There were countless medicinal pills, spiritual stones, talismans, and cultivation methods. However, there was not a single Qi-gathering pill. Instead, there was a medicinal pill called the Qi-gathering pill. Its medicinal power was slightly inferior to the Pearl Dew pill, but it was 10 times stronger than the Qi-gathering pill. There were a lot fewer impurities, and there were 1,000 of them. There were also dozens of other medicinal pills. However, what surprised Li Qingshan the most were the 2 embroidered boxes filled with talismans. Inside were 2 light purple medicinal pills that gave off a strange fragrance. The embroidered boxes were obviously used to prevent the medicinal power from being lost. Li Qingshan did not dare to look too long and hurriedly closed the embroidered boxes. Something that a 9th-layer Qi practitioner treasured so much was definitely not ordinary. When he had the chance, he would carefully inquire about the name of this spiritual medicine. There were many talismans. Apart from 2 or 3 superior-grade talismans that caught Li Qingshan's attention, the others were not worth mentioning. There were only 2 spiritual artifacts, but the difference of 1 grade was at least 10 times the value. Just these 2 superior-grade spiritual artifacts, the Scarlet Flying Needle and the Spiritual Comb, were worth more than the sum of all the spiritual artifacts that Li Qingshan had obtained, apart from the cursive sword calligraphy. Apart from this, there were not many spiritual stones, only a few dozen. They must have used all their wealth on the supreme-grade talismans, superior-grade spiritual artifacts, and the purple spiritual pill. Li Qingshan hugged Little and rubbed his hair. He smiled and said, "We're rich." He gave Little and 100 treasures pouches each. Little and said, "We're rich." Li Qingshan took out 100 herb pills and meditated on the spot for a while, recovering his true Qi and demonic Qi to their peak state. Only then did he raise the wind-entwining saber and open up the cave again. When he and Little and came out of the cave, they saw Qian Rongji sitting on the empty ground not far away. They couldn't help but be surprised. "You didn't leave?" Qian Rongji smiled and said, "I haven't even gotten the things I wanted. How could I leave just like that?" She had a calm expression on her face, but she was actually very nervous. Only now did she relax. She was even more shocked by Li Qingshan's strength. He had actually killed 2 9th-layer Qi practitioners. Although this cultivation technique focused on bewitching the enemy's mind and couldn't be considered good at fighting, the strength of a 9th-layer Qi practitioner could not be faked. In her eyes, Li Qingshan became more and more mysterious and unfathomable. She then looked at Little N, who seemed to be filled with mystery. She couldn't help but sigh. This child was still so clean. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.